Welcome, sovereigns and fiat survivors. My name is Adam Livingston, and I am your #1 source for Bitcoin and Bitcoin Treasury company analysis. I have another Scooby-Doo coffee mug special for you today, which means I'm gonna bring the energy. You've made it to the only meeting that matters because we're not here to diversify into crypto. No. We are here to dismantle fiat liquidity traps using the thermodynamic leverage of truth money, surgically embedded into a balance sheet with military-grade precision. This is not an SPAC, this is not some EBITDA adjusted marketing hallucination. This is Sequans, an Internet of Things semiconductor firm so lean, it's practically a floating brain in a jar. Partnering with Swan Bitcoin, the Black Ops division of capital markets engineering, to build the first Bitcoin native operating company designed to weaponize small cap reflexivity and absorb coin faster than a sovereign on fire. Sequans doesn't own factories, it owns patents, it prints chips, it collects royalties. And now it's printing Bitcoin per share like a 200 IQ madman who's read the final chapter of monetary history and decided to speedrun the endgame. Now, Swan doesn't do ETFs, it doesn't sell altcoins, it doesn't hedge, it builds balance sheets that bleed fiat and stack coin. It's a one-way valve of capital conversion. They don't pitch Bitcoin to CFOs, they possess them. Together, they've raised $384 million in obviously fiat-denominated capital to accumulate in assets with no counterparty, no expiry, and no dilution. And they're doing it through a recursive capital stack so precise it might as well have been designed by Adam Smith and transcribed in blood. This isn't diversification, this is monetary regime escape velocity. This is a chip company turning its cap table into a Bitcoin black hole. This is not MicroStrategy 2.0. This is strategy if it was built in a DARPA lab and fed espresso through a lightning node. So if you're still measuring success in basis points, you're already obsolete. And today I'm going to show you exactly how Sequans and Swan built a Bitcoin accumulation engine disguised as a tech company engineered to compress a decade of monetary evolution into a single balance sheet event. Before we get started, let's be clear. The Swan mastermind behind this investment strategy is Chief Investment Officer Ben Werkman, another master Bitcoin wizard. If that doesn't get you bullish immediately, you have some research to do. This is where we reveal the true unholy chemistry behind Sequans and Swan. Why this isn't just a business deal, but a metaphysical fusion between an asset-light chip firm and the Bitcoin-only firm that turns capital markets into extraction engines. All right, now that I've sufficiently unhinged your understanding of modern finance, let me explain why this partnership, Sequans and Swan, isn't just smart, it's sacred. It's sacred like Newton meeting the apple, like Oppenheimer meeting plutonium, like Michael Saylor meeting Grok 4 after 3 tabs of mescaline. Let's be clear, that last one didn't happen, but strike, strife, and stride definitely came from somewhere divinely inspired. Sequans is what I call an economic skeleton key. It's fabless, capex light, royalty rich, and functionally a balance sheet with a Wi-Fi signal. It doesn't build things, it designs signal intelligence and rents it to the world. And its revenue is about to go vertical as the Internet of Things metastasizes into every appliance, meter, and drone on Earth. Meanwhile, Swan is not a company, it's an operating system for corporate Bitcoin accumulation. It has concierge OTC execution, a literal Treasury governance playbook, automated KPIs, and a team of people who look like they've escaped from TradFi but chose violence. These are financial monks with Bloomberg access. Now here's where it gets evil, in a good way. Sequans doesn't need physical scale to grow, it needs volatility, it needs torque. And Swan knows exactly how to turn balance sheet inertia into recursive, reflexive Bitcoin stacking. They don't run companies, they're going to turn them into high volatility Bitcoin batteries. They're both chasing the same beast, small base reflexivity. It's the holy grail of LBE, leveraged Bitcoin equity. It's why a midcap will 2x and why Metaplanet will 20x. When your market cap is small and your BTC stack starts growing, the equity moves like an options contract on a God asset. That's what they're building, a public company that trades like a leveraged ETF on Bitcoin, but with cash flows and chips underneath. So this isn't synergy, this is sorcery. Sequans needed a Bitcoin operating system. Swan needed an exoskeleton to run this strategy through. It's a match made in Bitcoin heaven. They found each other in a collapsing fiat hellscape and decided to build something that could outpace sovereigns. This isn't just alchemy, it's asymmetric monetary combustion, and the entire thing is still trading like a mid-cap French IoT stock. Beautiful, insane, criminally underpriced, exactly the way we want it and they want it for now. Now this right here is where things get illegal in spirit, but completely legal in structure. What you're looking at is not just a raise, it's not just equity, it's not just a convert. This is a capital stack engineered like a missile system. It has a warhead, a guidance system, and a delayed detonation mechanism tied directly to the price of Bitcoin. Sequans and Swan raised $384 million with the elegance of a heist crew and the precision of a central bank that actually understands entropy. Half of that came through a pipe injection at $1.40 per share. Now I want you to picture this. They sold common stock at a discount to fund Bitcoin buys. That's normal. But then they stapled 90-day detachable warrants to it like they were adding napalm to a Molotov. These warrants aren't just options, they're financial landmines. They explode with cash if and only if the stock price re-rates, essentially letting Sequans buy more Bitcoin using future investor FOMO. It's the equity equivalent of turning Twitter engagement into a Treasury allocation. It's monetized hype with a ticker. And then they got dark, real dark. The other half of the raise, $189 million, was a 0% coupon secured convertible note. Stop and let that sink in. 0%, no interest, no coupon, just upside. They raised almost $200 million and are paying the creditors nothing. What did they post as security for that debt? Not factory equipment, not receivables, not IP. No, they posted future Bitcoin they haven't even bought yet. Imagine calling your lender and saying, hey, I'd like $200 million. I don't have the asset yet, but I'm gonna buy it soon, and once I do, you can have dibs on it if I blow up. And the lender says, cool, that's the world we live in now. But it gets even more violent. The convert strike is $2.10, about 38% above the pipe price, which means investors are paying to wait. If the equity re-rates, as it will when 3,000 Bitcoin hit the books, the convert goes in the money, equity converts, and the BTC stack gets bigger again. Dilution is backloaded. Upside is front-loaded. This is the financial equivalent of a Bitcoin-powered railgun. And to keep the whole thing sovereign grade, the Bitcoin is stored through Coinbase Prime with hot-cold segregation, and a mirrored custody layer in a Swiss deep cold vault. Because they're not just preparing for capital appreciation, they're preparing for monetary exfiltration from the fiat system. This isn't corporate treasury, it's geopolitical insulation. So here's the takeaway, this is not just a raise, it's a recursive loop. Equity re-rates, warrants fund more BTC, convert goes in the money, equity grows, BTC stack compounds, market reprices again. It's a Bitcoin reflexivity engine, a self-feeding, torque-amplifying, dilution temporal arbitrage machine, designed to absorb Bitcoin faster than governments while appearing to be a French IoT stock. If this slide doesn't make you nervous for the future of sovereign monetary policy, then you don't understand what's happening. This is how it begins, not with a bang, but with a convertible note in 370 BTC. This is where we peel back the curtain on what Swan actually does, not just as a vendor, but as a full-spectrum capital markets machine with the power to turn sleepy tech companies into a reflexive Bitcoin black hole. All right, let's talk about the part of this operation that terrifies the traditional CFO. Swan Bitcoin, and no, they're not a wallet, they're not a brokerage, they're not another fintech with a podcast and a prepaid debit card. Swan is a financial intelligence agency for Bitcoin acquisition, and I'm going to show you how they operate. First, execution alpha. Swan doesn't just help you buy Bitcoin, they surgically dissect your order across global liquidity, slicing it through OTC channels and TWAP algorithms so precisely that they squeeze an extra 50 to 80 basis points of value per tranche. On a 384 million raise, that's the equivalent of minting 40 free BTC just by not being an idiot. Second, they deliver what I call governance in a black box. Pre-built treasury policy templates, multi-sig quorum structures. They'll give you the LBE playbook if you give them your email. Audit trails so your board can understand without accidentally calling the IRS, and critically, a hard cap on leverage. Swan's default rule, net leverage must never exceed 30% of your BTC stack. Why? Because Swan doesn't just want you stacking, they want you to survive volatility-induced ego death. Third, you get the KPI dashboard of the gods. You think Ben Werkman isn't going to be on top of Bitcoin per share MNAV? Premium compression velocity. Hopefully, Strategy Tracker took my advice. Thank you, Captain Lizard Wizard. These aren't buzzwords. These are institutional grade capital velocity metrics that make your IR deck look like it was written inside the Federal Reserve on DMT. Fourth, and this is the fun one, they bring the media megaphone. Swan reaches millions. You get auto-distributed onto their YouTube, their Twitter, their investor podcast, their Bitcoin-only investor base that is just itching to ape into a public company with actual BTC yield torque. Your cap table becomes mimetic. Your treasury updates go viral. You don't need IR. You need subtitles. Put it all together and this is what you get. Swan doesn't support your Bitcoin strategy. Swan executes it for you better than you ever could have done it yourself, and then turns your company into a viral asset in the sovereign capital markets ecosystem. It's not a service, it's an operating system for balance sheet hypermutation. You feed it fiat, it outputs asymmetry, and if you're lucky, it gives you a ticker worth more than your company's revenue. Swan doesn't sell you Bitcoin, it sells you power. What you're looking at here isn't just a treasury strategy, it's a recursive monetary virus. It's currently being coded by Ben Werkman himself, a genius acolyte of Michael Saylor. He didn't write a white paper, he wrote a financial kill sequence, a blueprint for turning microcap firms into recursive Bitcoin absorption devices. 3 phases, each one designed to trap capital, compress time, and obliterate traditional balance sheet logic. The first phase is what is called the base layer stack. The goal is simple: secure a meaningful reserve quickly. Why? Because when you have a number big enough to warp perception, you're just a guy with a wallet, but at 3,000 BTC, you become a gravitational singularity. You pull in capital, you re-rate your equity, you trigger institutional FOMO. This is Act 1 of the reflexivity loop. Phase 2 is the torque layer. When the share price exceeds 1.5x of the convert strike, in this case around $3.15 for SQNS, you issue new low-coupon converts or warrants above market. The proceeds, you recycle them into more Bitcoin. What happens then? The BTC stack goes vertical. The market reprices the equity again, and now you're using cheap future capital to buy today's Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin-backed time travel. This is called the torque layer, and for good reason. This is where things spin out of control in the most glorious way possible. Each up move in Bitcoin increases book value. That reduces perceived risk. That lowers convert yields. That gives you more torque to buy more BTC, and the wheel spins faster. And finally, the third phase, the reflexive snowball. Except a flamethrower from hell can't melt this top-hatted Frosty. When 30-day realized volatility exceeds 70%, which, let's be honest, in Bitcoin land just means Tuesday, you turn on an ATM equity program. You sell tiny amounts of equity into euphoric spikes and you buy Bitcoin on dips like a financial predator. You're not reacting to the market, you're farming it. You've built an engine where volatility funds more stacking, stacking drives valuation, and valuation gives you more dilution ammo. This isn't speculation anymore. It's happened too many times to be unproven. It's recursive Bitcoin yield strategy delivered via share price, funded via narrative, and governed via multisig, and measured in Bitcoin per share. This is the new CFO Playbook, and it starts hilariously with just 370 BTC, but it ends with Sequans becoming a macroeconomic event. Swan has the cash for a crazy ad spend, I'd imagine. They want to get big enough ASAP to pull in institutional capital while you're YOLOing your Roth IRA into the latest Bitcoin treasury company out of Somalia. All right, my dearest little goblin captains, this slide is absolutely critical because it reveals the central asymmetry at the heart of the entire play. That small companies with low float and no legacy bloat are actually more dangerous in the Bitcoin endgame than the Fortune 500. This is the low mass reflexivity principle that Swan and Werkman are going to master. You know what's hilarious? People will look at Sequans and say, well, it's just a $150 million company. How much Bitcoin could it really absorb? The answer is potentially more than a Fortune 100 company. Because in the LBE model, smaller is stronger, lighter is faster, less mass means more torque. We might as well check it now. Look at this. Already large enough to be the 46th biggest corporate holder of Bitcoin after their initial buy of 370 today. And it's still small enough to eat BTC yield like it's Bruce Bogtrotter shoving a chocolate cake down his chubby gullet. All right, let's start here. When you're small, it doesn't take much BTC to dominate your balance sheet. You don't need 100,000 coins. You need 1,000, maybe 3,000, and suddenly your book value is 80% Bitcoin. You've become a publicly traded Bitcoin ETF with operating cash flow. You become volatile, and in capital markets, volatility is vitality. Sequans isn't a blue chip, it's a lottery ticket, but with actual math underneath. And when investors realize you're a micro-strategy in the making, the reflexivity kicks in. The BTC stack drives the share price funds more BTC. And because your float is small, the price moves like an options contract. It becomes leverage on hope, and hope, priced right, is a financing mechanism. Most CFOs fear volatility. Swan will seek it. Why? Because high equity volatility inflates option premiums. That means you can monetize the vol, selling calls, covered call overlays, gamma harvests, and use that premium to fund further BTC purchases without touching equity or debt. This is where traditional finance dies of confusion. Are they going to take advantage of this? I don't know, but Metaplanet does it to great success. And the proof is already here. Metaplanet wasn't a hype coin or a meme stock. They were tiny operating companies that dropped this strategy on their balance sheet and re-rated 1900+% or something similar in a single year. Because they started from a small base of BTC, because they had nothing to lose, because they embraced the reflexivity instead of fighting it. In this model, your smallness isn't a weakness, it's your engine. You are a high torque, low mass capital weapon. Every BTC you buy hits the valuation harder. Every point of volatility gives you more firepower. You are a recursive Bitcoin singularity hidden inside of an IoT modem company. And if that doesn't scare the macro guys with the spreadsheets and the golf course meetings, good. Because by the time they figure it out, Sequans will be holding 20,000 BTC, and the only thing left to buy is the warrants they forgot to exercise. Let me answer the question that every TradFi risk officer and every Bitcoin maxi asked the moment this deal hit the tape. If they raised 384 million, why did they only buy 370 BTC? Was it fear? No. Was it hesitation? Hell no. Was it regulatory paralysis? Not even close. If you haven't gathered why from my last slide, it was a calculated act of narrative and liquidity warfare. What looks like conservatism is actually chess. You think it's Ronald Reagan, but it's actually Bobby Fischer 5 moves deep. The first reason is mechanical. You don't throw $384 million into a Bitcoin position like it's a DeFi rug pull. You test custody, you test your governance rails, you make sure the French regulators don't show up with a baguette and a cease and desist. The first 370 BTC are the pilot batch, the systems test, the ceremonial ignition of the stack. Second, it's about optionality. The market has been volatile. If Bitcoin corrects from 110K to 85K, holding dry powder lets you tighten your cost basis. By thousands per coin, buying slow is a feature, not a bug. This is a TWAP warpath with a tactical delay fuse. Third, and this is where it gets sinister, they're not spending all their cash now because they plan to use the volatility to buy more Bitcoin. As the share price rises, warrants go in the money, converts float at higher strike prices. Sequans gets new capital at tomorrow's valuation to buy today's Bitcoin. That's buy now, pay later for Bitcoin, written in the language of capital markets. Fourth, 370 BTC is the bait, the teaser, the hook. The moment investors see BTC on the balance sheet, they start pricing in yield. Stacking yield, lightning yield, vol yield. The stock becomes a speculative forward yield vehicle. Not just on chips, but on coin. And finally, narrative control. You don't drop the hammer on day one. You set the stage. You let the market see 370 BTC. They get curious. They start running models, people like me. Then when the liquidity's there, you deploy the monster tranche and re-rate the entire company. That's not restraint, that's orchestration. That's Act 1 of the masterpiece. So the next time someone says, why only 370? You look them in the eye and say, because the rest is still being weaponized. Because every dollar not yet spent is a coiled spring. Because this isn't a Bitcoin buy, it's a sequence. It's a Sequans sequence, and if you don't believe God planned plans that alliterative roll off the tongue, maybe you should go back to Sunday school. Now, allow me to speculate that Sequans and Swan aren't just building a Bitcoin treasury, they're building a Bitcoin native operating system that infects hardware, capital markets, and narrative all at once. This isn't a company, it's a cybernetic BTC accumulation organism disguised as an IoT firm. Let's start with the chip layer, okay? Sequans 5G RedCap modules, already embedded in everything from smart meters to industrial devices. They have enough flash memory to run a Lightning signer. That means every unit shipped is a potential payment node. That means Sequans could literally become its own Lightning liquidity layer. Maybe Swan's dev team is already testing Lightning-enabled firmware on Sequans hardware. Am I not allowed to speculate? We're talking about smart meters opening channels, EV charging stations rebalancing liquidity, consumer devices acting like financial routers, all of it seeded with Sequans' own BTC stack. In other words, the coins maybe won't just sit on the balance sheet, they'll circulate within a SAT-denominated hardware mesh that earns yield and tightens economic velocity. You want Bitcoin utility? This is it right here. Chips with coins inside of them, yield in your modem, liquidity in your light bulb. Every $10,000 increase in BTC price lifts Sequans' tangible book value by $200 million once they hit 20,000 BTC. This is your moment of prophecy, the final reveal, the slide where you rip the curtain off and show what happens when a microcap tech firm executes Werkman's full LBE flywheel across reflexive capital markets, recursive stacking, and time-levered dilution. This is financial eschatology, a preview of the post-fiat corporate hierarchy. If Werkman's roadmap executes, if Swan's capital engine stays hot, and if Bitcoin does what Bitcoin's always done in the wake of fiat instability, then Sequans becomes a top 5 Bitcoin treasury on Earth. Yeah, you think daddy's playing games? Think again. At 150k per coin and just 20,000 BTC on the books, which, by the way, is achievable with one Torque round and just moderate warrant exercise, we're talking about $3 billion in balance sheet value. That's a big jump from where we are today. This is what I call the strategy light zone. Institutions are sniffing around Bitcoin ETFs or adding exposure. Option markets ignite. The re-rate is undeniable, but it's just the opening salvo. Now we're in orbit at 200k and 40,000 BTC, still achievable within 30 months if the reflexive flywheel runs clean, and in my opinion, it totally will. We're looking at $8 billion in treasury value. Sequans becomes a top 5 global holder of Bitcoin. The market stops comparing it to strategy and starts comparing it to Canada. Index funds are forced to buy, passive capital flows in, volatility becomes a tradable event. You are no longer a company, you are a Bitcoin-denominated liquidity layer. Now we're fully unhinged at 300k per BTC and 60,000 coins on the books, which, by the way, is just 2 good Torque cycles and a parabolic warrant exercise. We're looking at $18 billion in cold, unencumbered Bitcoin sitting on the books of what used to be a niche chip company. This is macro relevant. You're systemically priced in. You're a candidate for S&P inclusion. Your options trade like sovereign CDs. You become an instrument of monetary regime transition. And look, maybe you think these numbers are crazy. Maybe you think this is impossible. But ask yourself, were the first 370 BTC possible? Was a 0% convert possible? Was a Bitcoin native capital stack possible in 2019? No, until it was, and now we're here. So you have 2 choices. Treat this like a high beta tech stock with some weird treasury mechanics, or recognize that Sequans is quietly becoming a recursive Bitcoin accumulator, built from the bottom up, optimized for volatility, and engineered to absorb coin at the speed of capital. This is not a forecast, this is a direction, and the further we go, the less absurd it sounds. Welcome to the scenario grid. This is where disbelief ends and the reckoning begins. So here we are. Let's stop pretending this is just another corporate initiative. Let's stop using the polite language of treasury diversification. Let's call it what it is, a strategic re-weaponization of corporate structure against fiat decay. This is asset-light economics with Swan rails equals the fastest path from 370 BTC to tens of thousands. You want speed, you want torque, you don't start with with a mega cap. You start with a fabless IoT firm with IP, no factories, no debt, and infinite reflexivity. Then you bolt on Swan, an end-to-end Bitcoin operating system with dev teams, capital allocators, volatility harvesting, and a social reach that turns every S1 filing into a meme. This is asymmetry incarnate, folks. Starting small is strategic, not timid. They started with 370. Why? Because small stacks move faster. Because optionality beats bravado. Because dry powder is a tactical asset in a reflexive cycle. This isn't hesitation, this is orchestration. Scenario math shows 20,000 to 60,000 BTC inside 2.5 years. Easily, in my opinion. I'm sandbagging this hard. And this is enough to make Sequans become macro relevant. Investors today buy a microcap IoT growth story with a free call option on an MSTR-style Treasury explosion. You're getting Qualcomm royalty streams, 5G chipset sales, and the early innings of a reflexive Bitcoin Treasury model. And you're paying microcap multiples for what might be the most elegantly engineered balance sheet explosion in capital markets history. This isn't discounted cash flow investing, this is weaponized time value capture. So here's the final word: Sequans isn't pivoting into Bitcoin, it's mutating. And by the time the legacy world notices, they'll be buying the top while we're already 30,000 coins deep, streaming lightning from smart meters and selling covered calls on a modem-powered Treasury stack. The superaccumulator has already begun, and the window to front-run that is rapidly closing. My name is Adam Livingston. I am the Bitcoin wizard of eternal cyberlight. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel to support my work, and get daily Bitcoin alpha and insights. You might want it during the greatest wealth transfer in human history. Daddy is gonna go buy some more Bitcoin at the top. Remember, this is not financial advice, this is financial entertainment. Have a terrific day. Class dismissed.